Facebook land.
You might have to scoot over this way a little bit more.
Okay.
Are we together?
All right.
All right, awesome. Hey everyone, welcome to Reread Business Books.
Biz.
Oh gosh, thanks for being here. I am Jackie Force with Jackie Force Realty and
April Blackwell with Blackwell Mortgage.
this is Reread Business Books. So if you are not a part of this, or if this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much. But if you haven't, if you're not familiar with what we're doing here, We Read Business Books was a group that April and I created out of our love of business books and personal development. And we're sharing our book reviews with you in hopes that maybe a nugget or two will help you along the way. And this week, or for this episode, we are reviewing 10% Happier by Dan Harris. Now, this book has been out for quite some time. It is actually the 10th anniversary edition.
Yes. Good, we got the same one. We got
Yes.
the same one. Okay, good. Sometimes we get the wrong edition.
Yes, so there was, and I've known about this book for a long
Yeah.
time. I listened, Dan Harris was he's a reporter, he has a podcast, and I'm like, I don't know about this book, and felt like,
This is Dan Harris. You might recognize him. He was on ABC for a long time.
yeah, and so I knew a little bit about his backstory and knew about the book, but then I heard him on a podcast recently talking about his 10-year anniversary, and I thought, you know what? Let's do this. I was curious and I picked it up, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. I didn't have a lot of expectations. I didn't really know what to expect, but I really liked the story.
Yeah, no, I really had zero expectations. I think I probably have just heard of the title and had really no idea what it was going to be about. And I have been in search of biographies. I've just sort of wanted to break up what I was reading regularly. So I was surprised to really kind of figure out that this was, to me, it read more like a biography about his incredible story covering the news. What an exciting life. I mean, he was, back and forth in Iraq and covered all types of war stories.
Yeah.
And then he was mentored by Peter Jennings. And just, it just covers so much groundwork of his life, starting from his early 20s until about maybe the age of 38, when he kind of came to this discovery of what would make you 10% happier.
I know. So this is, April mentioned a little bit about Dan Harris, the author. But he actually, his backstory, in which I was really interested to learn about his story. And I also was on a quest I want to know more stories. We read a lot of business books that are some great how-tos and strategies and lessons and all of this sort of deeper stuff. But I really just wanted to hear someone's story. And that's exactly what he does in here. So his journey starts really, so he's a news reporter from, started local news all the way up going to ABC News. But there was a time in his career, which is a super competitive, very stressful kind of, news reporting job, which I can sometimes identify with in the businesses industries, not quite as, different industries, but there is a lot of stress, and any one of you could probably identify with having a very stressful job. He actually had an anxiety attack on air. So he just had a situation where he couldn't think straight. The room was closing in, and he was live on air. And
by the way, I Googled this, and you can find the original panic attack. Because he has since referred to it apparently. So you can just Google Dan Harris online panic attack, and you'll see what it is that we're talking about. But in the book, he admits sort of what led up to that. He was doing some pretty hard drugs.
Yeah. Yep. Trying to mask and deal with the panic of the stresses and the overwhelm of his job.
Yeah, exactly. And then Peter Jennings had sent him on an assignment to cover religions in America. And then that got put on hold because of the war breaking out in Iraq. which he was covered. And then after Peter Jennings' death, he picked up the assignment to cover religions, and he really does it from a skeptic's point of view. And it goes on to include not just mainstream religions, but also other maybe belief systems and spiritual practices. So he goes on this like wild, I would say wild, but he goes on a journey.
It's definitely a journey over years of him sort of digging down and understanding. From him, he was a self-proclaimed, not an agnostic, like didn't have any particular views other than he just didn't really believe in anything in particular. So he was open for suggestion, and in his reporting, really digging into meeting some of these religious leaders and understanding not only religion, but it even goes a little bit beyond that too. Some different
Deepak Chopra.
He
meets Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle, which have really become, those two guys, like he kind of caught them in their early years. And what I love about what just to kind of, capture just sort of like his skepticism behind this. He said, for Eckhart Tolle, he believed he was sincere, but questioned his sanity.
Oh, yeah.
For Deepak Chopra, he believed he was sane, but questioned his sincerity.
Interesting. Yeah. Coming from a reporter's indifferent kind of like, let's investigate this. So he does spend years, and so as he's doing this research for his job, he takes it in sort of personally and learns some lessons for himself.
Yeah, and he's curious, and he has lots of little probes along the way. His wife recommends a book, and so-and-so recommends this. He's in therapy. His therapist recommends meditation. And that's sort of really the key takeaway.
Right.
That's how we get to the key takeaway. It's like part of this journey, this one particular thing was recommended. And that then begins its own path of trials, tribulations, trial and error, more skepticism, shame, worry, concern of how he would be treated by his friends if he's known as a meditator. And then basically how he concludes that it makes him 10% happier.
Yeah. So all of this journey I think he also, so in his, in the book, he also describes like throughout these years, how it has helped him handle the stresses of his job, of everyday life, how he perceives things and looks at the world a little bit differently. And so, and this was also at a time where some of these, meditation or other kinds of practice seems a little bit more mainstream now, probably due to folks like him talking about it. But back in the day, it wasn't quite.
It was still evolving.
It's still evolving.
It was catching. I mean, it was catching because he actually went to, was it General Mills? Was it a big corporation, and they had like meditating like rooms for their employees, and it was like really kind of like at the beginning of they were I guess washing out some of the Buddhist particulars associated with meditation, and creating like new vocabulary around it, like mindfulness or something about purposeful pauses,
right?
And to make it more palpable for the Army general, for example.
Right, yeah.
They talk about there was like an Army, like, and they actually, the meditative training permeated ranks of the military to make warriors better warriors, which was, really interesting. I think by now, so fast forward 10 years later, I went through like this 8-week course in mindfulness when I went to this holistic doctor last year, and I was like recognizing some of the practices that he mentioned here, like the mindful walking and the eating and the kindness prayer about may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be well. I was like, I've done that. Oh, I'm not 10% happier yet though, but it is a practice. So.
Right. So, and this is why, and it's funny because the 10% happier title happens right at the end. He explains that because it wasn't, he was trying to, what was he trying to do? Like, as people were asking him about it, he was trying to make it, I don't know, downplay is the right word, but he was just saying, well, what does it do for you? And he, instead of having this long kind of answer, he's like, well, meditation just, it makes me 10% happier. And then just by, not promising the world and this great change, just having this incremental bit, people are like more intrigued.
Yeah.
It
So
sort
there
of
is
caught their attention.
no scientific study that shows that this makes you 10% happier, but it really played into sort of his observations of this self-help movement, the New Agers and things like that, that purportedly promised you that if you, thought your way and changed your thoughts or attracted things through telepathic, images or whatever, that your life would be totally transformed. He didn't really buy into those big promises. So the 10% happier is just sort of his way of like underselling the practice, just to say, you know what, like we are all a mess.
Yeah.
Every single one of us. Like no matter what we look like on the outside, we all have voices in our head that are thoughts that we ruminate on, and I can't remember what he would call it, but it's sort of like you project forward, like, somebody in the meeting didn't look at you. So because they didn't look at you, you're losing your job and your career's doomed and you're going to be homeless. You're like, wait a minute. Like
he did this spiraling, like he does like dread spiraling or something like death spiral, or he called it something, but I think, we're all, no one is immune to that stuff happening. So this book, actually, it's his journey, but I think going through his journey with him, it was really cool to see and to go through that with him. And I mean, it says that how I tamed the voice in my head, reduced stress without losing my edge, and found self-help that actually works, a true story. So this is Dan Harris, 10% happier. And, what I really liked about it, like I said, is a true story, is his journey. But it doesn't promise the thing, the world, and that just a couple things that you might be able to do and incorporate into your life. Like, listen, if you could just do 10% at one time, or if it's 10% over a certain amount of time, we're that much better than we were yesterday.
Yeah, and the end of the book gives you, I think, practical expectations, or things are like practical uses for meditation and compassion, and also like ways to do it, and things that just make sense, that like if I care about what other people need and want, in addition to what I care about myself, and then I'm really concerned for them and empathetic for them, then you can't help but become a nicer person in the process, and to be loved more because you are showing that you care about more. So they talk about sort of like this self-interest of selflessness,
right?
And it's just sort of like, if I'm really trying to help Jackie and I'm sincere, then she can't help but feel admiration and maybe an indebtedness of gratitude for me, and then maybe wants to help me, and then so I get something in return, So it's just sort of like, hey, like don't manipulate people with niceness, but good things come from being good to others.
Yeah, and you also feel good doing it. So
Exactly.
that's the selfish part, I guess, of it.
Yes.
Would be like, I can also get the benefit from this positive experience that I'm helping someone else out or whatever for even myself.
And there's even a little bit of science in here. So like there's a thin little chapter about the science of meditation, which has really been proven without a shadow of doubt that it has a multitude of benefits. And they actually even said that, acts of kindness are equal to having a piece of chocolate. That it triggers this pleasure center
So if
in
you're on
your
a
brain.
diet,
So if you're on a diet, be kind to somebody. I don't know what I would have to do to scratch that itch for me, because I really
for the
love
chocolate.
my chocolate.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're on a diet, just go be nice to somebody.
So the other thing, I agree. The other thing about this book too, I think we both commented on this, is really well written. I mean, Dan Harris so I thought maybe I was the only one that had to look up different vocabulary words in here, and April admitted that
Have
she
your
did too.
dictionary nearby.
So well written, and
Yeah.
I felt a little 10% smarter reading it.
You definitely will be 10 to 20% smarter reading it. He speaks to his audience as if they're intelligent.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, he doesn't treat them like fourth graders, which, many of us have been taught that when you write on a sixth grade level. He does not write on a sixth grade level. He's writing on a collegiate level, which I really appreciated. I felt like, wow, this guy is
really well
stimulating
done.
my
Yeah.
brain
It was
right
good.
now. Yeah.
It was good. And I think that if you're looking for something to be inspired by, if we're talking about who would this book be good for? It was a great inspiration. It was good for me, I found motivation in just going through someone else's journey with them. As we have a very distracting world out there. It was just sort of nice to dig into somebody else's story.
Yeah. You see, you're not the only nutcase out there. I'm not the only wacko with crazy thoughts and struggles and things like that. And,
feeling all of these things.
Other people too. Other people suffer and struggle
Yeah.
and have pain and drama. So, hey, by the way, if you have suffering, pain, and drama, you are not alone. You are in good company. And there are ways for you to quiet the noise in your mind.
Yes,
and meditation is one of them. So.
Yeah, and just being interested in the mindfulness and he also talks about how it's hard, so some people will go through meditation and they're like, oh, I can't do it, forget it. And he's like, it is a practice, and the reasons why, and learning how he has learned about it and has taken that into his routine is interesting. So it's you're not alone in a lot of different ways.
And he does have a podcast now. So he has left television reporting because the unanticipated success of this book, 10% Happy, which kind of, I guess, became maybe a movement. And now for living, he does his podcast and public speaking about his findings and the benefits of meditation. So I have not listened to his podcast. Have you?
Yes.
You have?
Of
Is it
course
good?
I have.
I know. I
April.
mean, of course you have. She's the one that goes down the rabbit hole and gets all the resources
it all
and
up.
all the stuff. I'm pretty slow, but what do you think of his podcast?
So I really like his podcast. So there is you can get it ahead of time if you're a paid subscriber on a certain platform, but you can get it. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify and all that too. You just get a couple days later, kind of. But I do find his guests a lot of times have to do with either science or physicians or wellness space, or just intriguing kinds of people that he has on his podcast. So, there's not everyone I would go to, but there are some topics and authors. He also has authors on there too. But his interview style is because he's a trained journalist, is really good. He asks great questions.
Yeah.
So it actually, if there's a topic out there or someone you want to hear from, and it's on Dan's podcast, I would totally listen to it. He's also on Substack, which is actually a little bit more of a bite-sized version of his podcast. So if you're into Substack, he posts more frequently and with some extra material and such. So
Jackie, you're just,
Yeah.
how do you have the time to like listen to all I didn't even know I don't know what Substack even is. You'll have to give me a
well, I
tutorial.
sent you a message on there. So
Yeah, and I probably was like, I don't know,
it's a new platform, a newer platform.
Well,
So
anyway, if you've heard of 10% Happier, if you've read this book, comment below. What did you think about it? We have not covered all of the, tantalizing stories that are in this book. I mean, there's some good ones. There are some good ones.
Yeah.
Read it for the stories. I mean, even if you're not into meditation, I mean, if you really want to know what a journalist's life was like and just get behind the scenes biographically, this is a good book for that too.
yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Oh, next book.
So next book. Hello.
This was recommended by Jackie. How did you hear about it?
So I heard about it from our friend Liz.
Okay,
So they read it, and a few other female business owners that we know have not in our space have read it and said it was great just in the first few chapters. So it sounded like a great, March is also Women's History Month. So we're going to focus on a female writer and
Who's local-ish.
yeah. We found out that she used to be at UNC.
Yeah,
right?
the local the author is Allison Fragali, not sure, Fragale. We'll probably look that up. But man, it was reviewed by Adam Grant, Daniel Pink, Kim Scott, Annie Duke, some of our favorite authors.
Yeah.
So it's been highly revered. So I'm looking forward. I have not cracked it open yet. So
I haven't either. Mine is on. It should be at my doorstep. So that'll be in March. It will be. We will post when our next review of that will be, but most likely with schedules towards the end of the month in March. And so be on the lookout for that. If you want to join the conversation, go ahead and pick up a copy. You'll probably have a link to that.
Yes. So quick note on that. If you purchase it on the links that we post, we get some kind of commission, typically like 4 to 5% commission. That doesn't go to us. It goes to our nonprofit, 1c1313.org. So you can check out what we do with that charity to support local nonprofits in our area, 1c1313.org. So so we read for charity.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, next, thank you everyone for listening in and joining us here. If you have any comments about the books that we have read or will be reading, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you have any suggestions, that too. So until then, keep reading.
Bye.
Finish. Right down there. Substack, but we can't finish this.